Well, hey, everybody, happy Wednesday. We are getting ready to record Mike in the Midwest here a bit early, one day early, because tomorrow's going to be busy. Don't want to miss the show hitting your feeds. So here we go. Mike in the Midwest, episode number 71. We are getting there. Here we go. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to episode number 71 of Mike in the Midwest, a mini podcast for the great patrons like you of the Be Our Guest podcast. Of course, my name is Mike Rallman, host of the Be Our Guest podcast. You can check out everything we do over at beourguestpodcast.com, but please do follow me on the social media at Be Our Guest Mike on Twitter and Instagram. Come on over, say hello. I'd love to talk to you on these socials because that's actually what makes social media social. I want to talk to you, and thank you so very much for being a patron, for supporting all we do. It means a lot to me. It allows us to keep the show going. So thanks for being here. And I hope you always enjoy this bonus content here midweek, a little extra show just for supporting the show. And I hope this is kind of fun stuff, a little off the rails, just kind of a little behind the scenes stuff from growing up here in St. Louis, talking about stuff that we might mention on the podcast and going a little deeper, which is what we are going to do today. So I hope your fall is going well. We've had some crazy weather here in the Midwest this past week. This past Sunday night, we had the live call-in show. So thanks to everybody who was a part of that. We did cut it a little bit early, about 10 minutes early, because we were under the gun for some tornado watches and then some tornado warnings and severe thunderstorm warnings. I was scared we were going to lose the electricity and I wouldn't get to save the file to put out on the feed on Thursday. Fortunately, we didn't even get much rain where we were. We had warnings all around us, all the counties around us. It was crazy. I don't know how we did not get hit. But there were a bunch of, I think there were five EF3 tornadoes, which are kind of the lower end of the major tornadoes, just to the south of us, about 60 or 70 miles to the south. So we were thinking about the folks down in St. Mary and Fredericktown, Missouri. So hopefully they can recover quickly. And thanks to everybody who reached out and asked if we were safe after Sunday night. We were. We didn't get hardly even any rain. We just got a lot of wind on Monday morning. I went out to run on Monday morning. Temperature was 55. Rolled out of bed thinking, shoot, 55, great temperatures, going to be perfect to run. The trees were all crazy. The flags were popping when I went outside. I took about 2 steps. I said, nope, not happening. Went back downstairs, and that's why I have a treadmill. I know I'm such a wimp. I should have ran in the wind because that'll get me accustomed to running in the wind when the time comes. But it was like 5:30 in the morning. It was dark, and I said, it's Monday morning. I don't need all that. That's not how I'm starting my week. So I just jumped on the treadmill, put on Pluto TV on the iPad, and watched some amazing race from about 20 years ago. So that's kind of how I started my week. How do you guys start your week? What do you do? How do you keep yourself motivated? And how are things going here in the fall? This week, of course, this weekend, we have Halloween. What's everybody doing for Halloween here in 2021? If you listen to the podcast, I don't know if I said it on Wednesday show or if it's going to come up on Friday show, but I give the ultimate 2021 last minute Halloween costume that will not break the bank. If you need something, you're going to a party this weekend, or you're giving out candy on the front porch and you don't want to just be sitting there in your normal clothes, go as the supply chain. Just grab a chain, put it around your neck, put the word supply, have a couple kinks in the chain, and you're set. Tell me that isn't the perfect costume for this year. A couple kinks in the supply chain. Everybody could be laughing. I don't know why. I just think that's hilarious. That's me. But anyway, thanks for being here. I appreciate you so very much. And I hope you are enjoying the Be Our Guest podcast. I would love to get some feedback from you on social media or emails, because you guys are kind of the ultimate focus group. You are kind of the ultimate fans of the Be Our Guest podcast, and I listen to you more than anybody else because you're invested at the highest level. What are you thinking about the show over the past, 6 months or so? We always try to get Pam and Ricky on as much as we can. Pam is, I don't know if you've kind of put two and two together. Pam is building a new house. They sold their old house about 3 months ago. She's been living in a townhome for the past little bit here. It's why she's been traveling to Walt Disney World quite a bit, because she's in a small townhome when she was used to living in a big regular house in Pittsburgh. And so her house is supposed to be done right around Thanksgiving. So moving into Thanksgiving and Christmas, I can imagine she may be out a little bit because they will be moving into her new house. And you know how that is with getting the internet all set up in the computer room and the home office. Um, Ricky's obviously been with us a lot, but she's been traveling some. I have really enjoyed what Scott has brought to the table, and he's kind of always kind of waiting in the wings as Pam can't record. He's there with us. When Ricky can't make it, he jumps in, and I really enjoy the Sunday Night Live call-in shows with Scott. I think he brings a lot of perspective to the table that I don't have. He's a Disney Vacation Club owner. He you know he likes things that maybe are outside of my wheelhouse. He's really into the signature dining. He stays more deluxe resorts than I do many times. And I always like to try to find somebody that we have a lot in common. We like to do the Run Disney events. We're really good friends, but we have different experiences. And I think that brings a little more variety to the show and can help folks that are looking for a different perspective. So if there's something you want more on the show, you're never going to hurt my feelings. We've been doing this for almost 2,000 shows. And I always want this to be a show that when it hits your phone, when it hits your feed, you're excited to see what's going to happen on that next 30 minutes that you spend with us on the podcast. So let me know. Just send me an email, mike@beourguestpodcast.com. And just tell me like, hey, can you try this? Or, this is something we could cut out. Also, I would just want to send a shout out, and I'm wondering what your feedback is. The Monday podcast with our guests that come on every Monday. I think our Monday guests have been so good over the last 6 months or so. I am so impressed because remember, I'm not the greatest podcaster of all time. Trust me, I get that. But I get to get behind the mic 5 times a week. I do this all the time. The folks who come on our Monday shows, I mean, I basically just cold call them. It's like that iced tea commercial that they have right now. This is a cold call. Like I send them a link, boom, let's record a podcast. And our guests that have come on over the last 6 months, they're like seasoned professionals sharing their stories, talking about all these fun stories and giving dining reviews and reviews of their hotel rooms and funny stories from their experiences. I just got to give a shout out to our Monday guests because they have really brought it to the table. And I've enjoyed those shows a ton because I'll be honest, when I record the Monday podcast, I have no idea where those shows are going to go. And I've really enjoyed them. And I hope you have too. I know that it's a little bit different. With most podcasts, you know exactly what you're going to get when you download the show. Like most podcasts, obviously, are weekly. So you know that it has the same format every show. I listen to a lot of podcasts. Like, for example, every Tuesday, I listen to a podcast called Mac Break Weekly. It's always the same 4 guys, always talking about Apple news. What's the latest with the iPhones, the MacBooks, with the iOS updates. Fun discussion, but it's always pretty much the same format. I know that's what I'm going to get. With our feed, you're going to get something different throughout the week. Obviously, Trip Reports on Mondays, questions on Wednesdays, Thursdays. We just kind of throw that out there in case you missed it. I know Thursday's probably not everybody's thing. It's a way different type show, but I hope maybe you'll give it a shot because we try to throw some more Disney news in there and also discussions and also get more voices in there. I want our show to always be about more voices. It's called Be Our Guest. And I want you to always feel like we have not just Pam, Ricky, Mike, Scott, but we have kind of our whole community getting involved. And that's another way to get some more voices. And then Friday, we always just try to have some fun on Friday. I think this Friday show is going to be a lot of fun. It's kind of a time capsule for the 100th anniversary. Kind of came up with that. Well, actually, one of our listeners, Leslie, came up with that one. So we talk about that. Anyway, give me some feedback on the show. I hope you're always enjoying it, but I appreciate you guys supporting it very much. You guys really do help us keep things going. And I hope this is definitely an investment in our podcast. And I hope you see a return on this investment. I try to make it, I look at it as, I try to make, enough podcasts and put them out there so that, it's less than $1 a show on your investment into our podcast with as many shows as we put out. And I hope that, you see that it is worth that to, compared with all your other subscriptions and stuff that you pay for. I want to make sure that you're getting a value out of your Patreon subscription. So thank you so much for that. All right. Well, let's talk real quickly about last week's show, which was the 2003 Burn Bombs Guide to Walt Disney World. That was kind of fun to look back at, in 2021, the 50th anniversary of Walt Disney World. We're kind of waxing nostalgic on things at Walt Disney World, over the past, I guess, 6 months. And we'll be doing that here for about the next 20 months or so. But it was fun to look back and see what the Birnbaum's Guide in 2003 was really get us excited for back home to head down to Orlando, Florida. And I got some feedback. And Jack Witzig, he says he's got to check out the mall. So that was something else we talked about. But Trisha Hellwig, thank you. Jack, also thank you for being a patron. I appreciate you being here. Trisha says, and thank you for being a patron. When I was a kid, it was a big deal to get the kids' guide. It was full of pictures and trivia and jokes. We felt so powerful, like we were planning the trip. Ultimately, that was never the case, but I kept all my guides. As a mom, I buy the kids' guide for my daughter, and she uses the sticky tabs to mark her must do's, which happens to be almost every page. I totally forgot to mention that because when Paige was younger, we always got her the kids' guide, the kids' Birnbaum guide to Walt Disney World. And if you remember, I don't know if you had these, Trisha obviously did. And I bet you a lot of you that are listening right now probably had these or got these for your kids. In the back, one of the things that was very, very interesting, and I think the unofficial guide does this now too, was that they would survey kids and find out, like, from a kid's perspective, what was the best coaster? What was the best restaurant? And the funny thing is obviously, what hotel had the best swimming pool? Things like that. And it was always fun because the places that were kind of bland that an adult would never pick were always the places that the kids would pick to go eat. Because I remember like Pizza Planet was always one of the top rated restaurants in the kids' guide to Walt Disney World. And it was, just basic pizza. But it was, for 7-year-old kids, it was like, I guess, a dream. It was like elementary school cafeteria pizza, and they liked it. And one of the other things about the kids' guide that I remember, and this kind of saved us a little money. Again, I'm not cheap, I'm frugal, is that in the back of that guide, there were like, I want to say like 10 or so empty pages for autographs. And so instead, that's terrible, right? Instead of buying an autograph book for Paige, we would take her Birnbaum's Guide, and she got the Birnbaum's Guide autographed by the princesses, the characters throughout the trip. And then when she got home, she put that book on the shelf, and she had all of her notes before the trip, and then she had autographs from the trip. And it was kind of like, encompassed like before and after and during the trip. So we got autographs in that book itself too. All right, Jennifer Perry's here. Thank you so much for being a patron. She says, we visited Disney World in January of 2006, and I looked at my scrapbook of that trip after listening to the podcast. We were there to celebrate my mom's birthday, and our kids were ages 4 and 6. I remember Pal Mickey, gold Mickey ears, and it was the happiest celebration on earth. I find it amusing that we use a credit card shaped photo pass to store our pictures. I have so many of those, just like in boxes around here, which now display immediately on My Disney Experience on our phones. We had to go to the camera center in the parks to view and order our pictures. Magic shots were already a thing back in 2006 because I have a picture of my kids with Tinkerbell in my daughter's hand. That's right. Remember the camera center? Does it still say? I think it does. As you go in Epcot under Spaceship Earth, does it not still say Camera Center, even though it's not a Camera Center anymore? Because I think that's just a little nostalgic nod to 1982 Walt Disney World. Nostalgia. It's a powerful thing. All right. So speaking of that, let's talk a little nostalgia because that's what this little bonus podcast is always about. But of course, this Sunday is Halloween. We're not obviously too. We're not going to have a call-in show because my nephew's coming over, and we're going to go trick or treating in our neighborhood, which we haven't really got to do properly since we moved here because of COVID. So I'm super excited for that. We get to go around and see our neighbors' houses that are all decorated and meet, trick or treat with him. He's super excited. He's going to be a dinosaur. He's 4. So we're going to have fun with that on Sunday night. But we're going to kind of mix a little nostalgia and Halloween here. And I just want to go down this rabbit hole with you guys for about 15 minutes because I know you have to have semi-similar situations here. And I mentioned this on the podcast this week in passing. I was watching the news the other night here in St. Louis, and a story came on about the mall I used to work at when I was in high school. So for about 3 weeks, I left my job working at the roller skating rink, which was a sweet job because I started working there when I was 14. My next door neighbors owned it. I grew up in the rink, friends of the family. I never really had to work there. I managed it. I just hung out there basically and got paid for it. It was the easiest job in the world, as you can imagine. I played music. I ate popcorn. I ate hot dogs. I told everybody else, all the other kids, what to do. I played hockey, I speed skated, easiest job in the world, right? I don't know why my one of my good friends in high school though, he got a job at Chick-fil-A at the mall. And he's like, you got to get a job at Chick-fil-A. You'll make a quarter an hour more. If you work there long enough, they pay for your college. And there's all these other opportunities. And I'm like, quarter an hour more. Let's do it. I'll get paid more. I'll get a raise. So I was like, okay. And this was like this time, it was like in November. It was right at, as Christmas shopping season was in full swing. So I go there, you interview, you get dressed up kind of back. I mean, this is like in 1990. You still kind of put on the Dockers, the polo shirt as you did, and at least that's what my parents told me I had to do. So you go in, they interview you at a table in the restaurant there in the mall. Because again, here we didn't have standalone Chick-fil-A's. It was in the mall next door to Pass Pets, by the way, at Jamestown Mall. Got the job, worked it. So this isn't about working at Pass or at Chick-fil-A, but I worked there for 3 weeks and it was so busy. That thing it was like, oh my God, it was like Black Friday every second that I worked there for 3 weeks at that mall because there were only like 2 or 3 Chick-fil-A's in all of St. Louis. That mall was packed all the time, intense. And I'm thinking for a quarter an hour more, is it worth this? Like, I'm going back to the skating rink and just sitting there and drinking Pepsis and playing music and just playing hockey when I get off work and speed skating and just, bossing people around as a, 16-year-old. So I didn't work there super long. It wasn't that it was a bad job. It was just that it was busy, man. It was intense. And you always had here's the thing about Chick-fil-A that I'm not good at. You had to upsell everybody. That was part of their deal. If you didn't upsell, you could get fired. It's like if somebody ordered a medium Coke, you had to ask them, would you like to get a large? Or if they just ordered a regular meal, would you like to get a large fries? And I'm just not that kind of person. I think that, if somebody orders something, that's probably what they want. But that's just kind of how I was brought up, like my grandparents and my parents and stuff. Anyway, let's get back to what I'm talking about today. So I'm watching the news and the story comes on about Jamestown Mall where the Chick-fil-A was. And again, I grew up at this mall. This is where we get dropped off in middle school. We'd hang out there all day. I went there as a little bitty kid. My grandparents took us there. We ate at the Sticks Bear and Fuller. There was a restaurant in the middle of the Sticks Bear and Fuller called the Garden Room. My grandparents loved that place. We'd go there at Christmas. That's where we met Santa Claus. They had the decorations. We were always at Jamestown Mall. I mean, everybody's probably got their mall in their town. Jamestown Mall was it. We were there probably at least once every couple of weeks, my whole childhood. So there's a story comes on. Jamestown Mall, obviously, it closed in 2014, like for the last time, but it started going like bad in probably like 2000. It just started going downhill. So anyway, there's a story on the news the other night about how this mall's been closed here for 7 years. Somehow there's a sprinkler system in the Sears anchor. Sears was one of the anchor stores, and the sprinkler system went off and it flooded the Sears store. The whole bottom level apparently was underwater. First question is, why is there a sprinkler system active in a mall that hasn't been open for 7 years? I guess you don't want it to burn down, but that seems like there would be a shut off or something. I don't know. Who knows? Anyway, so I'm watching the story, on the news. And so of course, you do what you do. You got the laptop out, sitting on the couch, and I click on, I was like, I want to see some pictures of Jamestown Mall from when I was a kid. What I was really looking for were and I don't know if your mall did this, but I bet your mall did during Christmas at Jamestown Mall. And this was a big mall. I think they said in the stories, 1.2 million square feet. Built in 1973, which is the year I was born. So I kind of have I feel like it was my mall. As you walk throughout the mall in the center parts of the mall, they had these like little scenes set up. Where they would have like, a scene of like basically they were almost like parade floats, but they were just like behind white picket fences. And they had like fake snow that was kind of cottony. And they would have, reindeer, and they weren't audio animatronics or anything, but maybe Rudolph's head would kind of, go back and forth. And, maybe Rudolph's nose would go red and, flash and stuff. But they had all these scenes like the elves making toys and, the reindeer and one of them. They're probably 5 or 6 scenes throughout the mall, but you would go through there, you'd look at them as a little kid. And that's kind of what I was looking for, was a picture. If anybody had those pictures from the 80s of Jamestown Mall decked out for Christmas, and I couldn't find any of them. But here's how this story takes a wicked turn for Halloween here. Get ready. So I click on images on Google, right? And so I find some, just static pictures. And here's the other thing. It's so sad to see places like this that were just part of your childhood. And I mean, Jamestown Mall could not have been any nicer when I was a kid in the 80s. It was the place to be, not only in North St. Louis County where I grew up, but in St. Louis metropolitan area as a whole. People went there because it was awesome. It had the best stores. It had the best restaurants. Like I said, it had Chick-fil-A, one of the only Chick-fil-A's in St. Louis. It was incredible. And then I mean, as I think we've seen with a lot of malls, over the past couple of decades, it just kind of fell by the wayside. Anchor stores kind of moved out. Some of the headliners within the mall kind of fell out, and then they get replaced with local stores that are, not of the greatest brand reputation, kind of move in, and then it just kind of goes downhill. And like I said, it closed. So anyway, I click through all the images. I can't find anything. So then I go into the videos. And I find this video of these urban explorers. And I don't know if you know what an urban explorer is. I don't really know. I'm not a big, I don't watch a lot of videos on YouTube. But what it is, it's these two guys. They broke in to Jamestown Mall. Now, again, it's been closed since 2014. And I don't know how they got in, but they just found this door on a dock, like on the backside of the mall. And it was just unlocked. I don't know if they had broken in before this and unlocked it, or I don't know how they got in, but they just walked in through a door. And they have, backpacks, they have masks on, they have like all this camera gear in a backpack, tripods, they have boots. And they go in with flashlights because obviously there's not electricity, but they go in during the day, and there's a lot of skylights in this mall in the common areas. So once they got through the access tunnels, they got out to the common areas, it was lit up because there were a lot of skylights in this mall, and there still are. And the thing was, it was heartbreaking to see Jamestown Mall like it was, because this was about 4 months ago. Now, I haven't seen this place since I probably last went into Jamestown Mall in maybe 2004 or 5, because when I taught gifted education summer school, we had a program where we would take our gifted kids over the summer 2 days a week to the mall, and we did programs where, because it was super hot over the summer, we got to use the mall for our projects. We had a big room, and we dropped our stuff off at the mall in a vacant store that used to be Casey's Sporting Goods. It was empty. We used that for kind of our classroom and where we dropped our stuff. And then we walked the mall for exercise. We would, get to measure things in the mall. We would do scavenger hunts. It was a cool thing, but that was the last time I was in it. And so these guys were obviously not from St. Louis. They didn't have any background with this mall. They probably traveled the country doing this. I don't know, because they didn't know any of the stores. But for somebody who this mall meant something to, like, to me, this mall meant a lot to me, because my grandparents are long gone. And if you've gotten anything out of Mike in the Midwest, as I've been doing the show for about the past year and a half, I loved my grandparents, and they took me to this mall all the time. My grandparents ate it, like I said, the garden room. It was this little restaurant that was inside of the Sticks Bear and Fuller, which became Dillard's, which became Macy's, which was one of the anchor stores at the end of the mall. They ate there all the time. And so, but they always went to Jamestown. They always took myself and my sister with them to Jamestown, to the mall. And so when I think about Jamestown Mall, I think about my grandparents. Anyway, they go in and they're just looking around, and this mall is destroyed. I mean, I don't even understand it, because if it was locked up, I don't understand how everything has graffiti on it. There's trash everywhere in the places that you walk right down the heart of the arteries of the mall. All the stores fronts are open and you can go in all the store areas, but they're destroyed as well. There's just trash everywhere. And it looks like obviously people have been able to get into this mall very easily because everything's been tagged. Um, there's just everything has been flipped upside down, destroyed, knocked over. And the thing is, it's sad, because for me, it was really sad, because in this video, and I'll put a link to it here in the Patreon. And it won't mean as much to you, but I bet you can find something similar maybe to the mall where you grew up. And the reason is that it's sad and a little spooky is that my wife also spent tons of time at Jamestown Mall because, again, we grew up in the same community. She actually lived closer to Jamestown Mall than I did growing up, and she spent just as much time there. We always talked because we never went there together because we didn't even meet until we were teaching together at Wedgwood, but we had the same background growing up because we grew up in the same community. So when I talk about getting my pizza pretzel at Hot Sam's, she went to the same Hot Sam's at Jamestown Mall or Tape World or Baskin Robbins or A&W or Prince Plus at the mall. We all went to the same stores at Jamestown Mall. She was 1 year ahead of me in school, but we were probably there at the same time. That's the eerie thing. I bet you we crossed paths at the mall more than once. Didn't know her at the time, but I bet we did. But anyway, the sad thing is, they're going through and they're trying to kind of guess what these stores might have been as they're walking the mall. And there's this one store they walk past, and the only thing you see on the outside of it, it says room. And I just turned to Pam because we were watching this as she was doing her report cards the other night. And I told her, I said, that used to say community room. Community, somebody ripped the community part off and it just says room. And they'd had no idea, but they finally could kind of see the old glue from the letters there that they'd ripped down. You know how you kind of see the old like remnants of what was behind it. So one of them was like guessing. He's like, a community room, maybe. And that's exactly what it said, because when I was a kid, like I mentioned, that was a store called Casey Sports. And I would go in there every like February and get my cleats for the new baseball season or batting gloves. I would check out the new gloves and bats. I loved that store. Like that store was, it was like walking through Santa's workshop for me every spring before a baseball season. Like these guys walk past it and they have no idea how special that store was to me. Because in the end, after it moved out, it was a big store. So they called it the community room. And that's where, we used it for gifted education for like classrooms. But I mean, also people could go in there, senior groups and stuff and do exercise classes and stuff. And that's what it was. But they didn't know that. And then they walk by and, we're like, oh, that was KB Toys. Oh, that was CPI, the 1 hour photo developing place. That was Wilson Leather Goods. Oh, that was Zales, and it was that kind of thing. And, as I kind of wrap this up, it's one of those things that if you think about it a little bit, especially in this Halloween season, right now, as I'm recording this, the sun's going down here in St. Louis. It's getting dark. There's definitely a chill in the air today. It's getting cooler because we're at the end of October. Right now, Jamestown Mall hasn't been raised yet. It's still there in North St. Louis County. And right now, I could be walking through that mall probably if with enough effort. I mean, if I wanted to risk going to jail, I could walk through there. But man, that would be not only one of the saddest things I could do, because I want to remember it as it was. Like, I don't want to remember it as something that has been destroyed and vandalized and is so sad. And a lot of that is not only Jamestown Mall, that's kind of a microcosm of where I grew up. Like, we have moved in the last 2 years out to this great place. It's St. Peter's, it's St. Charles County. We are so blessed to get to live in this house where we live now. I've said this so many times. Mallory goes to a great school. We're in a very safe community. It's wonderful. But where we used to live, that's kind of how the whole community has gone. So many places have left the community where I grew up in Florissant, Missouri. We had, for example, the community swimming pool where we used to go with Paige all the time. We had season passes all summer. We'd spend, Pam and I, because we were teachers back then, we'd just go around the lazy river for hours because that's all we had to do. Paige would swim with her friends. It's gone. Like there were so many troubled problems with the pool and kids fighting and all that stuff. They just covered it up with cement. They still have the community center with the basketball, court and the workout rooms and the stuff like that inside, but they don't have the pool. They got rid of the aquatic center and it's sad. A lot of the stores are gone. It's just one of those things that, and I guess it's just a fact of as you get a little bit older, times change and places change. But yeah, it's one of those things like I was just thinking, wow, It's, it, I told Pam, because there's two parts. I haven't seen the second part of the video yet. And I don't know if I want to watch it. But if somebody paid me $1,000 to walk through Jamestown Mall at night tonight, there's no way. There's no way. That is so scary. And it's so sad. But I don't know if you have any place like this that in your town, or maybe from a former place where you live, because again, I know a lot of you have lived in different states and different countries, and you've moved like way far away. I have only made it 17 miles from where I've grown up in my life. We moved 17 miles away from where I've spent the first 46 years of my life to where I am now. I haven't moved very far. I have a very small bubble of where I've spent my entire life. You've probably had more experiences than I have, but I'm curious. Do you have that mall? I have the skating rink too. They knocked the skating rink over probably about 15 years ago and built a Gold's Gym. I hate that Gold's Gym every time I see it because it's in the place I grew up and I loved. I don't know. I would love to hear your story though. It's quick, just give me a paragraph. What do you have? Drop by patreon.com/be our guest podcast. I'd love to share your thoughts on next week's show. You know that song? They've paved paradise and put up a parking lot. Well, they haven't done that for Jamestown Mall yet. I think it may be worse because right now it's still there, but it's worse. So there you go. It's a Halloween Fright Fest. Kind of a downer. I didn't mean to make it a downer, but we're all there, right? One of those places that, wow, I wish they could bring it back to its glory, but you just know it's not going to happen. So give me your thoughts. I want to hear, give me some thoughts on social, but I'd love to have you go by Patreon so I can share these on next week's show. What's the place from your childhood that's gone or maybe hanging on by a thread that you just really, really miss? Patreon.com/be our guest podcast. Thanks for being here. Have a very safe and fun Halloween with your family. And until we talk again, boo to you, and we'll see you real soon.